Grace to you and peace from God who was and is to come. I hope and pray that you are in good health, and that you are holding on to the promises our faithful God has made to us, able to be content to wait for the Lord. Verses 30 through 32 in the 9th chapter of Mark's Gospel remind me that there are times we have to wait for understanding. Thank you for letting me share with you my thoughts on this. Scripture says, they went on from there and passed through Galilee. Jesus did not want anyone to know it, for he was teaching his disciples, saying to them, the Son of Man is to be betrayed into human hands, and they will kill him. And 3 days after being killed, he will rise again. But they did not understand what he was saying, and were afraid to ask him. This is the word of the Lord. And here are my thoughts. I suspect the disciples were often frustrated by things Jesus said that they didn't understand. But you'd think Jesus had communicated these 3 straightforward points clearly enough. He'll be betrayed, he'll be killed, he'll rise again. I suppose it could have been just that last part about rising that the disciples didn't get, and they were too embarrassed to ask what Jesus was talking about. I suppose. More likely, I think, their inability to comprehend shows how easily understanding can fail when confronted with bad news and undesired information. More likely, they were afraid to ask because if they understood, they'd have to face the truth. I admit, I could be interpreting these verses through the lens of recent events. How many warnings about the coronavirus were ignored, downplayed, and denied? The information was laid out plainly. Maybe people didn't understand how bad it could get because they didn't want to hear or believe it. Students are still having spring break parties at beaches. Adults who should know better are still ignoring social protocols. They're not keeping that distance between. They're all acting as if this is something that couldn't happen to them. They couldn't get sick. It is so frustrating. I keep hoping they'll start to comprehend the risk their actions are posing to themselves and to everyone with whom they come in contact. Apparently, I'll have to keep waiting for that. Maybe understanding will come when the pandemic hits closer to home. I'm not sure the disciples really got what Jesus was saying until it started to happen right in front of their eyes. They couldn't ignore it anymore. How frustrating it must have been for Jesus. He's trying to prepare them for the worst and still give them hope for the best that will come after. But they're just not getting the message. Understanding will come eventually. In the meantime, Jesus will just have to wait for it. I have a quote for you. E. Stanley Jones wrote in Victorious Living that victorious living does not mean perfect living in the sense of living without a flaw, but it does mean adequate living, and that can be consistent with many mistakes. This gospel of ours is called the way. Our feet are on that way, but only on that way. We have not arrived at the goal. I might add, you could say that Jesus is still waiting for it. Meanwhile, I'll leave you with a blessing. May your eyes be open to what you need to see, your ears be open to what you need to hear, and your mind be open to what it needs to comprehend. Then may the Spirit guide you to make good use of it all. May God bless you this day and always. Amen.